Ernesto Valverde might be on the verge of revolutionizing football tactically, and half the world is not even noticing it. Like, if people would actually catch on to what he's doing tactically, especially if you think about positional play and overloads, he might do that. As always, do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us a lot to get the family to grow bigger. But without wasting time, let's get right into the video. Now, before we analyze all of the tactics, let's see the system quickly. That is when one of your number 10s would actually join up front in what looks like these front two. You have your double pivot, and then it seems like a 4-2-4 situation. However, you can also have Iñaki Williams joining up front, where you would see the fullback coming forward, where you would see one of the defensive midfielders drop into the space and basically operate, especially if the defensive midfielders, the double pivot, gets marked down. So that's the system of Ernesto. The CDM is joined by the central midfielder, which is kind of like what Barcelona is doing, giving them all the control in the world, where the central attacking midfielder, the number 10, is joining the striker. And the fullbacks stay in their position where they have to defend, which is kind of giving positional vibes, which is the tiki-taka way, giving them control. I want to start off here with the fullbacks, as I'm really impressed with the way he uses his fullbacks, right? You would not see them doing their traditional role where they would overlap, especially like in the final third. They were more positional fullbacks, right? As they would help out in the build-up phase. So that was their main job. They only have two jobs. The first one is helping in the build-up phase. So if a press would happen here, right? If a press would happen here, they could easily create a third man situation, right? As none of these players could really follow this guy, this number 10 that would be dropping and receives the ball, because you had Iñaki Williams and Nico Williams that would be in behind your team instantly. So the fullbacks being so deep also allows Bilbao to have this vertical threat that they would have, especially against the bigger teams that likes to press. Here we see that the fullbacks are very positional, staying in position, actually helping with the build-up play, where they would draw these players into a press away from the center to activate the verticality. And you would see the central midfield and double pivot actually allows Nico and his brother to stay up high. Higher up the pitch, the fullbacks would actually stay in their position and still be part of the build-up play, where Nico and Iñaki is fully capable of taking the man on in one-on-one situations. Therefore, they are allowed to go into these positions. But more importantly, in the situation where they would lose the ball, especially high up the pitch, these fullbacks are fully capable also and are in a position to be able to defend whatever comes their way. Where you would see with Barcelona, for an example, these fullbacks, if there's a ball in behind Barcelona, many a times are in big trouble, as they could play it through here. But with Bilbao, you would see the fullback always operating in position. Here we see that the fullbacks of Athletic Bilbao is pretty much intact, as they are closer to the center backs as they are to the forwards. And the midfield is also intact, with the front three operating and just sharing positions. The fullbacks being in this position actually creates an outlet tactically in terms of playing the ball out, however also for that defensive stability that I was talking about. Another thing about this system, and probably the most impressive thing, is the overloads that they have across the board, where they would always have 4 men available no matter where they are on the pitch. For example, you have the triangle right here, but if the fullback comes with, you have a square right over here. You have a square right in the middle, because when Gomez joins the number 9, you have another square available there with the double pivot. If you need to have an overload in the build-up phase, there you have another square, right? And this fullback can come right in over here. There you have another square. So it's really astonishing. It's astonishing how they can have these squares all over the pitch. Then even Iñaki Williams can also join a little bit deeper right over here and have that square. So they will most likely be outnumbering the opposition across the board all the time in a system like this right here. Here we see the center backs forming that square with a double pivot, and the pivot can also be forming that with the number 10 and the striker. And then, interesting, you can see one of the strikers, the winger, fullback, and also the pivot can form those squares on either side of the pitch, which is amazingly overloaded. The other thing I wanted to point out here is third man runs, right? Because we just established that Athletic Club can really have overloads all over the pitch. Now against Roma in this instance, I saw a lot of third man runs where Nico would drop a little bit deep in order to help out with the build-up play, right? and these players fell into the trap of trying to press. Then you saw third man runs through here. Many times this player, the striker, can also come and try to overload right there, and then you would have seen these balls from deep and these runs from deep, excuse me, creating these third man runs. And to be honest with you, this system cannot really be pressed effectively without you having to take an awful lot of risk in order to basically press them, because they can get you anywhere they want. They could have Nico Williams drop deep and have an overload there. If you want to press this effectively, look how many plays you're going to have to end up committing. And Roma actually in this game in particular played with 5 defenders, and they still got put and pulled, excuse me, to shreds, right? So third man runs is going to be a big thing in this system from Valverde. Here we see that Nico Williams is actually dropping deeper in order to help in that build-up phase, where he's running from this deeper position, where one of the pivots was joining him to draw them all across to that one side. And then you see the fullback bursting through that gap right there. But I want you to look at something else as well. Nico Williams, when he was done doing that, he was also on his bike running back in order to get into that space. However, it is in the overload to isolate tactic where Valverde's tactics actually come to life and actually comes together, because they can actually do that positionally without anybody going out of position, where they would drag the opposition across to this one side. Now, normally if you look at other teams like Barcelona, for example, they have to get the wingers in. Everybody kind of have to be out of position, right? But with Bilbao, you can really see that they are doing it positionally without losing their shape, which is astonishing to watch, where you would see them pull the opposition to one side, and if they want to press effectively, they're going to have to put in some players here. Angelino might be joining in here, where you would see Nico Williams and his fullback being there, where he would basically run across, where you would see this second striker or the first striker would open up this hole, where you see third man runs coming through straight here from deep, where you can easily have Paredes find these players, right? And this overload to isolate tactic, like I just said, this number 23 is great on the ball, where you could also switch. And this is basically what's happening, where you would see if they would lose the ball here, everybody is still in position, still intact, trying to stop this. So this is just world-class tactics. And like I was saying, if anybody catches on to this, we might be in big trouble, right? Here we can still see that square, which now has turned into a diamond, is still intact, where you see the fullbacks still intact. So you have the overload, to isolate with positional play still. The striker drawing one of the center backs into that position, where the central midfielder positionally would make this run. So this is just incredible tactics from Ernesto Valverde right there. The only genuine flaw that this system has is technical ability. If these players cannot execute the system or defend well and win these balls, they would be in some serious trouble. But furthermore, if you can't stop this, if you don't know how to press, you can easily get pulled to shreds, right? Let me know how you guys would fight against the system, how you would defend against the system. And as always, do subscribe to the channel. We upload weekly Barcelona content only. Thank you very much for watching this video.